My name is Ketaki Verma. I'm the Director of Arts and Culture at Asia Society's India Center, and it's wonderful to see a full house here today on a busy Saturday evening. Thank you all for joining us. I know there are still a few people coming in, but in the interest of time, we thought we would begin. We're delighted to host this screening of Working Girls, the Mumbai premiere, directed by Paromita Vora. The film is part of the EU-supported Laws of Social Reproduction project, anchored at King's College London and supported by Indian partners, the Centre for Women's Development Studies and the Institute for What Works to Advance Gender Equality, or IWAGE. Paromita herself, of course, needs no introduction. She is an award-winning filmmaker and is internationally celebrated for her inventive, genre-bending style. She is one of the most distinctive feminist voices in Indian cinema and media today. Her work spans film, digital media, comics, installation art, and writing, and is known for its playful, emotionally resonant, and deeply political engagement with themes of feminism, sexuality, desire, and popular culture. Her past work includes a series of groundbreaking documentaries like Unlimited Girls and QTP, as well as Partners in Crime, Morality TV and The Loving Jihad, Where's Sandra, among many others. Her work has been broadcast worldwide, exhibited at major art spaces such as the Tate Modern and Wellcome Collection, and is taught in universities across the globe. In 2015, she founded the path-breaking Agents of Ishq, a vibrant multimedia project that reimagines sex and desire through an Indian cultural lens. We're also huge admirers of Paromita's much-loved weekly column, Paranormal Activity, which is now in its 15th year. Today, we present her latest work, Working Girls, a project that builds on the research done by the Laws of Social Reproduction project. This documentary invites audiences to rethink what it means to work and who gets to be seen as a worker. Filmed across cities like Kolkata, Mumbai, Shillong, Latur, Thiruvananthapuram, Hyderabad, and Madurai, it strives to uncover the invisible yet essential work that is performed by women, from care work and domestic work to surrogacy and sex work. It offers a deep dive into the histories of law and gender through humor, music, and diverse forms of storytelling, and it leaves one thinking about ideas of labor, value, and visibility that dominate society today. The film runs for 2 hours and 14 minutes without an interval, after which we'll have a short conversation with Paromita, who will be joined on stage by the incredible writer and poet Akhil Katyal. We encourage you to keep your phones on silent or switched off for the duration of the film. I hope all of you enjoy this beautiful work and that you'll stay back after the screening for the conversation as well. Thank you. Here's presenting Working Girls. Can I invite Paromita Vora, the director of Working Girls, on stage, please? Sure. You can have a seat and then I'll give you the mic. And Akhil Katyal, writer and poet, who will be in conversation with her. Yeah. Can we dim this light, please?
Actually, while we're waiting for them to put on the light, I just wanted to introduce some of the team members who are here. So, Mukul Kishore, everybody knows him in Bombay, the camera person. Tanushri, maybe you guys could come up front so people know. Tanushri was the assistant on the film and without whom the film couldn't be made. The Sumana Kasturi, I don't know if she's still here, who did translations. And Savitri in the back also did translations. I don't know if Bhushan is here, who wrote the lyrics for the song in the end.
Hello.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I don't know if anybody else came from the team, but if you're here, please put your hand up.
So we are going to have a discussion for about 30 minutes, which Akhil will moderate. So please keep your questions ready. After about 20 minutes, we will invite questions from the audience, and there'll be somebody passing mics around. Over to you, Akhil.
I think we should begin with another round of applause. What a wonderful film. What a wonderful film. I was seeing the film for the second time from the wings, and I could feel the high level ki khushi, which is what one of the applicants also mentioned, not very far from here. This has clearly taken many years, many conversations, many visits. Like, give us a sense of the process. Like, maybe we could begin there, because it travels to so many places. It meets so many people, so many conversations about what labor is counted and what is not, and how it is seen. Could you give us a sense of process? Because as the film also tells us, it emerges from a conceptual world as well, a university world as well, but then it goes into the field and does its thing. So give us a sense of process. Perhaps we can begin there.
So yeah, as Akhil said, the film actually is part of this research project, academic project called the Laws of Social Reproduction. And I think in that sense, because the project already had relationships with organizations and people on the ground, and they had been doing that research. And I think I had separate relationships with those organizations because of my other work that in the past. So I think in some ways when you say many years, actually it's about many years of just being part of a world or a sensibility or a politics, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, for example, the Sex Workers Collective in Pune, Saheli. Now, of course, the Laws of Social Reproduction Project had been working with them. But they also, like, when I met them first, they were like, oh, we love you because of Agents of Ishq. And at that time, I understood also, right, if you're a sex worker, the fact that somebody is doing anything to destigmatize sex is more meaningful to you than it is to many of us living in the city who are thinking about it very differently, as expanding our personal freedoms, not as a matter of our very existence in society. So I think like those years of work added up to something, and that is why the film could be made in about 1.5 years. Otherwise it wouldn't have been possible, but it was very tough, even in the 1.5 years, the travel, the encounters with so many people. For me, a very different type of work to do, because I'm always very hesitant to make films about people from a very different social location than mine, because I always feel that anxiety about misrepresentation and, like, who am I to go and do that? And so all of those anxieties about documentary filmmaking. So that emotional effort also to think about how to do this, how to parse these encounters into a film, and so on and so forth, were very hard. They were genuinely, it was really hard to make the film. But it was also an amazing, I feel like it reconnected me with many things. It reconnected me with why we say we are feminist. It reconnected me with a phrase that has been rendered meaningless. This is a fight for our rights. There are so many things that people in the film say that we have become immune to, because they have actually been emptied of meaning by a very NGOized language, this corporatized jargon of rights. No? So we all are like, we a little bit eye roll when we hear that thing. But to go into these spaces, to meet all of these people, I just feel like, and I know you would have noticed it, the way they talk about the Constitution, the way they talk about laws, the way they talk about rights. It's very, very lived. It's very, very well understood. And in a way that middle class people don't need to think about these things, so they don't think about these things. I mean, it's kind of cool for, social media. But this is a lived intellect of people. So I think for me, I was very lucky to get the chance to do this project and to reconnect in this way with the purpose for why we do so much of what we do, and to be able to actually execute a kind of solidarity, right? Like even the idea of solidarity with people who are quite different from us, what does it really mean? So I think, those were questions, and there were also opportunities. And so in the making of the film, I also wanted to communicate that feeling. I wanted to give an experience of solidarity and what it can do, like it should move you. The film should move you to solidarity more than anything else, so yeah.
No, in fact, and the film is that piece of solidarity. This answer already sort of concretizes so much for all of us, I'm sure, and for me, this sense that what emerges from a kind of a conceptual question or intellectual question or a question of an activist also becomes a filmmaker's question, right? And, in the credits, all of us would have noticed there's kind of decades of feminist scholarship which is noted, which is sort of had tipped to...
Cited.
Which is cited, yeah. So I'm just... But you're also giving us a sense of how it sort of matched with your emotional bonds with various kinds of locales to which the film had gone. So, the question that was constantly occurring to me, being familiar with your other work as well, like what can a filmmaker do perhaps which an academic cannot? And, like we cite the work, how do we change it? How do we add to it? What do we bring to it? How do we continue it? And so what's about the film itself, because there's so many, and you work with across different media. So if you could think aloud for us about.
I mean, I think academia, I think all forms can do the same things. They can make sense of life, essentially. That's the purpose of so many of these forms that we pursue. I myself, I do read a fair amount of academic work. I have many friends who are academics, so sometimes I read because they give me their books, then I gotta read it, right? But I also genuinely had the chance in the last few years to read these incredible histories, which I drew on so deeply. And in Agents of Ishq also, we have been doing a series called Histories of Ishq, which really drew on the scholarship of people who've done incredible work around the 19th and early 20th century. And it was exciting to read those works because suddenly you understood why the now is the way it is. And also that the then was kind of like now, right? So that relationship between the past and the present with a sense of contemporaneity, it made history very meaningful. Because all of these things, actually the most difficult thing is that so many things feel disconnected today. That we live in a world of disconnection. And actually, if we can connect with poems, with stories, with histories, with other people's lives, then it would make us less lonely, actually. So I think for me, reading all of these things, also to find an example of somebody who's as peculiar as you in another time is very reassuring. It does make you less lonely, right? To know that there have been other people at another time and, well, they lived. And they made it through life pretty okay, so you can too. So I think all of those possibilities inform what you do. But I do think one thing that perhaps art and films amongst them can do, which is a little harder for academics, is that they can abandon disciplinary constraints. That academia is often really bound inside a discipline, and it is compelled to be, in that sense, very well behaved. But films can be badly behaved. and I think you can have cartoon effects in a film. Yeah. Anyway, documentary is supposed to mimic the proprieties of academia and the proprieties of liberal elite Brahmanism. Brahmanism, yeah. So, but a film can choose not to be that figure. The film can choose to be silly, bawdy, over the top, sentimental. Documentaries have traditionally not been supposed to do that, but you can do that. Nobody can actually stop you. You won't get selected for a film festival, but that's not.
We'll make conversations.
Yeah, other things will happen, right? So, and it's not the same thing as not getting tenure. Or maybe it is, I don't know. But then I think soon many academics are going to discover that without tenure also there is life, so same way.
You can say that again. Yeah. So, I mean.
Though I can't do the Trump accent, but okay.
And that's very evident. I mean, in fact, I was watching this for the second time today, and it's so apparent you enjoyed some conversations so much.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking, the Adil Padil dancer, Kaushalya, the egg donor agent, where the camera's on her and she's breaking into laughter moment after moment, and clearly, and from behind the camera, we can sense you joining in that. So give us a sense of some of the conversations that really sort of just overwhelmed you, took you over, and perhaps some which you would wanted to do more of, but constraints of field, constraints of work, funding, etc., might have pulled you back.
I mean, everybody. To be honest, with Madurai, it was a kind of a psychedelic experience to go to Madurai. I had never been to Madurai. I didn't really know anything about Adil Padil till I had not heard that term till I started working on the film. And one of the habits many of us have is to try to apply what we know of a similar context, is it like bar dancing? But it's not. Adil Padil. And Karagatam and all that. The world was so amazing. And it was such a sensory overload, and literally because their speakers, their music, it's so loud that even somebody like me, if I stood close to speaker, I used to get pushed, blown away by the sound, right? I mean, it was torture also at some level, but it was fantastic, invigorating, and I mean, in Madurai, because I can't speak the language, it was a little bit harder for me. So like when I met the girl who spoke in English, it was very exciting for me because I could actually ask her things. And that's like many things had to be edited out because of length. But there were so many things that that girl said, Sneha, that I wanted to keep in the film, right? The way one of the things she said, which I'll just tell you, is that, about marriage and all that, when I was asking her, she said, actually, boys in the city, they're very clever. In the village, they're like, I love you, I want to marry you, it's okay. But basically, boys in the city ghost you, and that this whole, it was so interesting to listen to her, so interesting to see how she said, I'm saving up money to start my own business. So this idea of autonomy, of wanting to be her own person, it was amazing. I think Vanita, it's very obvious that I adore Vanita, the sex worker at the beginning of Pune. I loved listening to Tejasvi talk, like I could have listened to her talk the whole day. Rita, I was obviously in love with Rita. Like I can keep on shooting Rita. Every day I can shoot with Rita because Rita is an incredibly intelligent person. Her capacity to understand her sensitivity and just her sophistication as a person is unparalleled. Because look at the way how briefly she can tell you all about the class system, the hypocrisy, and the double standards that are operating, how well she understands the inside of something, and in a few broad strokes, she can tell it to you. Yeah. And she's also very empathetic. And see, the thing is, when she's laughing, or when she says, अगर बच्चा नहीं होता वंश कैसे बढ़ेगा, and she's giving me that look because she knows that Paramita is going to make big eyes and say vansh, and so she already knows what's going to work for Paramita, and she's giving it. So her customer service is to me as much as to the Bengalis. so I loved Rita, and I loved the way that she had a sense of herself in the city. She's one of the most urbane people I have met in my life. So her urbanity I just really adored. The girls at the end, like high level ki khushi, The Asha workers, they're still on strike. It's been so many months. They are still sitting on strike. I would encourage you to follow their Instagram handle so you can follow that thing. But look at the way they speak. Like when Rosamma says this thing, that no, this is the democracy. And it's not like kisi ke baap ka nahi hai, that type of a thing. No, they're so articulate. So yeah, I don't understand Malayalam, but I could have kept shooting with the Asha workers also because I went there on my own to shoot and shot with an iPhone. So yeah, I could have kept on and on going. Their singing, everything about everybody was fantastic.
And in fact, the great thing about a film which otherwise would have been, intuitively, it would have been so difficult to manage so many contexts. But by the end of it, in this film, you get a sense you're having a substantial shared conversation. And that comes across really strongly. And perhaps precisely because you spoke so evocatively right now about all those conversations, so much of, we are not seeing what's on camera, but clearly that has led to this shared conversation evolving. But there's another shared conversation and it was so, you gave us a sense when you asked the translators, Mukul, who's worked with the cinematography, the lyrics of the song. So give me a sense of this team. Like, what were the notes? One of the...
I don't think you want to ask these kind of questions.
No, but one of the...
Our well-maintained coupledom in the wide world will be threatened.
One of the most wonderful moments of the film, when it opens and that the stage is there with those lush colors. And I'm just wondering what the conversation between the writer, director and the cinematographer would have been.
जल्दी से ले शॉट, जल्दी से ले, क्या कर रहा है? कर रहा हूँ.
So give me a sense.
ये अच्छा नहीं लगेगा. It is no. I'm sorry to say, but there are no intellectual conversations. There are only complaints. It's all mutual complaints. Yeah, I think like a lot of things when you go there, you also thinking on the spot sometimes. But I'm not one of those very complicated people, and but I had a sense like, okay, this sequence, like Rita, I knew that I wanted to shoot the whole thing as one conversation primarily. There wasn't going to be too much other things, but it was just going to be talking to her. In Madurai, obviously, we shot everything. It was the first thing we shot in the film, so it was also still with each sequence, I think I was also finding the film and becoming more and more sure about what it was to be. So I think it was more like that kind of an ongoing thing, doing it as it happened.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are so many questions. I want to bring you folks in because otherwise we'll run out of this half an hour very soon. There's a question there. I've been told questions, not loud meditations.
Please.
But so let's have, we have a great opportunity to speak with Paramita. Maybe it could go there. There's a person over there, then one right in the middle over here. Yeah.
Hello. Well, thank you, ma'am. This is very wonderful, and we had a lot of lived experience. We have seen it from the movie. I just wanted to one comment on in the entire picture, northeast, south, east, west has been covered. Could it be possible to have some insight from Hindi states or North
You have
Indian
too much
states?
insight from Hindi states. Like, the thing is, it was not a conscious plan to not include. It's just nothing that I really. I mean, like for example, ASHA workers have been on strike off and on in different places. So there was a possibility of maybe shooting in Madhya Pradesh or Haryana. But it so happened that they didn't go on strike at the time of making the film. And so it's not that I left it out purposely, but the conversation did happen that should we be shooting something in the north? The north is not there. But I do feel when I watch the film that that would just have been a box we would have ticked. I do think that I think the idea of India is determined from the norths. And it's quite good not to do that for a change. Yeah, like I think it's not necessary to use something as an index. Like people also ask me in other films, oh, there are no men. Haven't we already heard? There are a lot of men everywhere else. So like everything doesn't have to be vis-a-vis the norm. It can just be itself. I feel so. I mean, because so much good music everywhere. Like now in the north, what would we have done? It's a very important consideration.
Oh, hi, I love the movie Paromita and a big fan of yours and yours too, Akhil. I just wanted to, I was just wondering that when you were talking, what made you select these particular work as care work? Could there be others also in the wider range of things? And of course, when I was thinking about the Nach and particularly that emphasis, I loved it, and the whole connection with performance and then sex work, that flowed beautifully. And I was thinking, I'm not from this city, so I was just thinking one of the early memories of the city is the bar dancers, and that's also something that didn't show up. So I'm just thinking, what were the ideas and how did you capture them, and like a little bit.
So the
about
choice of the sectors of work was because the academic project that this is part of has identified these sectors as where they want to work, like Adal Padal Karagatam in the south, sex work, paid and unpaid domestic work, and surrogacy and egg donation. So that was my starting point, an entry point into the film. But then as I was working, for example, this idea, direct cash transfers is something they were working on. The Ladki Bahan scheme happened at the same time. But the ASHA workers thing for me also felt like it, which is not part of the project, but it felt like a kind of, it's like a pinpointed example of all of these things. So I really wanted to shoot with ASHA workers. But there are so many professions. Like the idea is more to give you a sense of the histories and of morality, and which shape law and our contemporary life and people's rights and how we look at each other, how we think about all these things, right? So I mean, nursing or hospital workers, there are so many forms of care work out in the world that could be spoken about. And I mean, not only would it be a very, 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 very long film, but a very, very, very boring film. So I think it's more like it's suggestive of something rather than trying to be comprehensive.
Yeah. Paramita, I wanted to... Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Beside Bhushan. Yes. So I wanted to ask you, you said that you could have shot with so many of these people on and on. So when you were at the editing table, who did you feel you had overshot with?
No, nobody. I mean, probably we felt like we have so much material and it was very, very hard to decide. But I don't think that I didn't feel that way about anybody.
Any quick, this thing on the cutaways, you have these very beautiful cutaways, particularly when you have the village in Latur and, some of these, and they go so well with what is being said in the film. So
I will tell the editors. I'll convey your compliments. Yeah.
In fact, when the film is moving from Latur to Tirunvananthapuram, the Malayalam song already begins.
Yeah,
and again, I mean, it's kind of these filmmaker tools to sort of hold the whole thing together.
Yeah. I think music is a very important part of the film and how it takes you from one place to the other geographically, but also emotionally. Yeah.
There are a bunch of hands right at the back.
Hi, Paramita. Thank you. Very moving experience. Talking of the film song that we heard as the film moved to Thiruvananthapuram, I don't know if you're aware, but
Yeah.
maybe Paramita is. It's a lyric from the very first Malayalam movie made, starring a Dalit girl, Rosa. So-
Is it from the first Malayalam film?
Yes.
It's a PK,
Ellarum
PK
Chollana.
Rosie, not Rosa.
Rosie,
PK
Rosie,
Rosie. Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
Ellarum.
I didn't know that. I knew it's a film song, and
Yeah.
because one of the editors is Malayali,
Yeah.
he showed me the song. So,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
that.
It's a very iconic film.
Yeah.
Because this is an academic project that is translated into film and chosen its own grammar, really. As a filmmaker, did you go in with certain perspectives? So, in that sense, what were your learnings and what were the unlearning that you experienced? I would really like to know.
People often ask you this question after documentary, and it's very troublesome for me because I feel if I say there were not any unlearnings, then I'll sound like whatever, or you fill in the blank. but I don't think it's that. Like, I don't think I'm a very rigid thinker. And meaning, I think like maybe that's my maybe my primary or even only good quality, that I'm not a very rigid thinker. So I'm pretty much curious and open to knowing anything. My reason for saying yes to the project, honestly, I don't even think I really knew what I was getting into when I said yes. But I felt two things when I said yes. One, that I had been reading all these histories and I was dying to make something to do with those histories. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the chance. So I said yes. And the second is that I have been very, very irritated for quite some time with the prevailing conversation around feminism, which is online, which is elite, which is disconnected from, the word intersectionality, wow, it's thrown around like a brick. But it's just that. It's just a brick for throwing. It's not actually something that people experience. No, they don't inform themselves about feminist struggles. And it's all like gender and sexuality becomes a placeholder for politics. So I felt like, yes. When I made Unlimited Girls so many years ago, Sakshi, who asked me to make the film, they said, we want to make a film that reconnects women with feminism, like the kind of young women who say, I believe in equal rights, but I'm not a feminist. And in a way, I think Working Girls is the same thing. It is an effort to reconnect people, not with, of course with feminism, which is a very meaningful idea for me, but what does it mean to be a citizen in this country? For you, what does it mean to have a relationship with other citizens when you don't even know about them, and when you're so comfortable in a silo online, thinking you're political, but never actually showing up someplace where you are not at the center? Like, see, when I was in college, not to sound like a really old person, even though I almost am, but I remember so many people going off to participate in the Narmada Bachao Andolan movement, right? Like, so many college kids went off to do that. I can't understand why hordes of people are not at the Asha workers movement, because 2 days with the Asha workers, and I just feel like this, I want to be here, because I loved the people who are running the Instagram handle of the Asha Workers Union, because they are middle class women, and that's the bit that they are doing. Like, they're not taking up space at the center. The workers are doing that. It's very important for us to be able to, it's important for our own selves, important for others, important for the relationships we have with each other. Otherwise, we'll be hopeless. There is a hopelessness when you look at the conversation online, which makes it very convenient to always say everybody else is at fault. But actually, it's only in solidarity that there is hope. It's only when you feel I can do a little bit of something that you can feel a sense of hope and keep on going on. And maybe this sounds like silly or idealistic, but I don't think it is. I think it's the truth of life. That solidarity is what brings hope and gives meaning and allows us to keep going. So I don't know if I learned or unlearned anything, but I felt all these things, and the chance to experience it, it was transformative for me. I don't know in what way it has transformed me as yet, but it was a transformative experience for sure, which is different from, I guess, unlearning, but maybe that's what you were wanting to know. Yeah.
No, idealism is never silly. You have to hold the world to a higher bar.
Yeah,
So it's always relevant. Thank you.
But of course I learned. I had never been to a red light area until I went to Budvar Pet. Yeah, no, Budvar Pet. That's where I went first. And it was incredible. Like, I really loved being there, and I hope to do more work with them. Yeah.
Another
Hello.
question?
Yes. There seems to be a lot of anger brimming right under the surface of many of these conversations. In some cases, the anger is expressed also, and yet there's so much joy and playfulness. And this is also true of many of the columns that you write. How do you make sure you're not overridden with anger when you're doing this art or writing your columns?
I mean, you don't need a gratitude journal to feel joy. That's all I'll say. There's so many people. So I lived in a tenement housing colony for a long time, and this is another cliche, but I really found that working class people were so much kinder, so much more helpful to each other. To me, the middle class girl living in that colony. Of course, it was my great aspiration to move to a 2 BHK, 1 BHK, any BHK instead of the one room I was living on, right? But it's not the same. I have to say, like that same sense of connection is not always felt by elites, and there's a lot of sense of suspicion and wanting to hold on in that way. But I think if you don't want to live a life maximizing your existing privilege, if you're willing to let go of some privilege, because I mean, another cliche, kuch paane ke liye kuch khona padta hai. So I think, like, I'll tell you, respectability is a thing that makes people boring, angry, hopeless, limited, siloed, right? And these people are not from respectable spaces. I mean, I'm respectable obviously by virtue of my birth, but I don't think in any other way. And I think in those outside respectable spaces, you make a great deal of connection. You have friends who are so kind to you. You have friends who cook for you. After I finished the film, when I went to Delhi, for example, my best friend had come, and I was like, I haven't slept for 3 nights, and I think I need to drink some coffee. And she said, no coffee for you. I'm going to get you some nimbu pani. Like small things that people do for you, it's a huge thing. We are so lucky to have that. And I think that if you think that, then you're angry, but you're also happy, and that's life. So you're able to live a full life by going through all the emotions and all the relationships. I think ASHA workers, for example, or all the people that we met, like the sex workers. I mean, look at the connections between them. Look at their tenderness during the Shindur Khela. Like in the Shindur Khela, I had tears in my eyes because of the tenderness with which people are touching each other and playing together. Like, no, these are beautiful things, and that's what gives you joy. Food. Everybody likes food. Fish.
In fact, I mean, you've touched upon it actually throughout this conversation, but we come to this tinderbox question, like respectability, but also I like the way that you veered it, that what is the joy, what is the tenderness that one can absorb from situations, locations such as this. I was also thinking this is also 40 years of India Cabaret, that documentary by Meera Nair.
Yeah.
And I was listening to some of the early interviews that she's doing in the, when she's talking about the early 80s. And when you spoke about a certain form of disappointment with a certain kind of online conversation on gender and sexuality, she's also saying that, and she's expressing the similar discomfort in the early 1980s in certain NGOI setups. And when she goes to Hotel Meghraj, among the bar dancers in Ghatkopar, then there's a sense of this solidarity, this joy, this making a world possible which is outside respect. And one of the most interesting sequences which several of us might remember is when the bar dancer Rekha is speaking, but the cutaways are to her client's wife. And I'm so which sort of thinks about in this film, like when we are seeing, because this emerges from an academic project whose focus is also on certain quote-unquote abject professions. But as you very rightly say, and that there are so many other professions in which these conversations could carry over, which are relatively less abject, hotel receptionist, air hostess, female politician, a BKC corporate employee, a filmmaker. So I'm
Most abject. As you can see.
So I'm just wondering, what would that film look like? In which, not just to speculate, just to fantasize, like what would that film look like where some of those professions which we see largely by working class, subaltern caste women, almost like spliced with professions which people in this room are also practicing?
Yeah, I think in your question is actually a longing to see many more films about people like that. Like, I was thinking, like Rajnikantha is a film I like very much because I just feel like, it's all about what's going on in a woman's mind. And there are many such examples. Like there is a book I really love, which coincidentally only is called Paro, Dreams of Passion by Namita Gokhale. Yeah, but it's really a coincidence. But I always love that book because I feel it has that splicing that you're talking about, like this girl who works in an office and then her bosses, her rich bosses, rich and voluptuous wife, and the fascination for that woman. So I think that really I don't feel we see enough of these narratives. That there could be a film that splices these two. There are such films, I guess, especially in fiction. And I always feel like it's slightly mannered, that way of splicing. So what would an odd friendship look like is what you're really saying. And sure, there should be several films which show us that.
Let's have one more question. Why don't we get the mic? And then perhaps we can begin to wrap up, just because in the interest of time.
So we might be sent to jail by NCPA.
Hi. So I was wondering about these women that you've interviewed. Once they actually see the movie and, they see all the result, do they feel like being featured in movies like these or projects like these actually benefits them in, whatever they are doing? So does it have any real life consequences for them?
Only somehow in every film also somebody asks this question. So I would like to actually ask why you're asking this question.
Because we are looking at it as cinema, as a piece of art, and all experiences might not be relatable for me. But for a person who's put in so much of their time and energy to actually participate in this, do they see something for themselves that they get out of it in a more tangible manner, is what I'm saying.
What if that's an intangible manner? Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
The reason I'm asking you this question back is I feel like there's this kind of middle-class guilt. Because yes, you're in a ritual, right? Mostly middle-class people watch a documentary so they can feel noble. And now maybe you're feeling a little guilty because you had a good time watching this film. And what should you do with that body contact? Other people in the film have seen the film. So I think that the idea that, the instrumental idea that the film should have a tangible result is the reason why there are hundreds of really boring documentaries. Does a film or any piece of art have a tangible result? Is intangibility not tangible? If you have changed the way you look at people and you do things differently, will that be tangible or intangible? I don't know. But I do know that just a few days ago, Rita came to our office to watch the film. And I wanted to shoot her watching it because I was seeing all the expressions flying over her face, right? And then at the end of it, she had tears in her eyes, and I asked her, what did you feel? Why are you crying? And she just said, "Bahut acha, ma'am. Main kabhi zindagi mein socha nahi tha." So what does it mean to be valued, even loved? Is it meaningless? So I think that for me is important. If they felt loved, that's as much as you can do for anybody in the world. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Valued and loved are also good notes to end on.
Yeah.
Ketaki, would you like to?
I want to say thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you to Akhil and thank you to the Asia Society for doing this.
No, thank you. Thank you, Paromita and Akhil, for this conversation. And Paromita, thank you, and Tanushree and everyone in the team for giving us this wonderful film and giving us the opportunity to see it. Thank you to all of you for taking time out and joining us. And I would urge all of you to please talk about this film, tell your friends about it, tell other people about it, and urge people to watch it. I hope this film travels everywhere, across India, across the world. And have a very good night.